Hello and welcome to the 27 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1 Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney III. Today's episode brought to us by our good friends at Wilson because we are in Omaha. And if you are joining us out here for the College World Series this week, make sure you visit the Omaha Experience. It's right across from the ballpark in the village. You'll find Evo Shield, Louisville Slugger, DeMarini, Wilson, all under one roof. Limited edition gloves, bats, gears, and more. It's available only during the Men's College World Series. So again, get over to the Omaha Experience over in the village beyond right field. This morning, I am joined by Joe Healy and Aaron Fitt, kind of our middle of the order bats. Kendall J. Rogers, we sent to the bullpen to start the game. He is getting hot, just in case Coach Rooney here can't get out of the first. We got to have Kendall ready to go. We may or may not bring him in the game. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for being our middle of the order bats.
Coach, are you comping yourself to Chris Stamos? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, me and Chris Stamos have literally nothing in common, but for the purposes of this podcast, I am the Chris Stamos. Although I likely have to get out of the first inning in this podcast, right? I don't feel like we have. No offense to Kendall, but I don't know, Joe. Do you see Kendall as the AJ Causey of D1 baseball?
Yeah, I mean, but much like AJ Causey, it's trouble when he needs to come in the first inning because he's probably not going to be able to finish it. So
Yeah.
but if you can get us into the third, now we're talking about Causey might be able to finish this thing.
No.
So yeah, I think we're gonna need a little more out of you today, Runes.
Okay, good. I've got it. I've even got. I think I'm even more well organized today than normal days. I feel like Chris Stamos is about to have a career day. So let's do that. Boys, we are going to talk about four sections to this pod. Let's talk about the two games yesterday. So the first game, Florida 5, NC State 4. Man, I have thoughts because I'm here on an ACC assignment. We are talking about this game a lot. Fitzy, what say you about this game? This had some storylines.
It did have some storylines, Coach Rooney, and I'll tell you what, I thought it was a pretty good baseball game. Ultimately, it felt like a pretty crisp, clean, well played game. We debated it yesterday about who should NC State start, and I think we took a poll, if I recall, on the preview show yesterday, and you asked us, me, Joe, and Kendall, who we would start if we were the Wolfpack, and we all said Logan Whitaker. And boy, Logan Whitaker was great. It's just too bad he didn't start. Because they started Dom Fritton, and I'm not saying it was almost a coin toss. I think you could certainly make a case for starting Fritton, but he didn't. He just wasn't that sharp, and they got to him early. 4 runs in the second inning, and from there it was it felt like all she wrote. I mean, Wolfpack kept hanging around. Whitaker came out of the bullpen and gave him 7 innings of 2-hit ball. Career high 10 strikeouts. He was awesome. Veteran who was ready for the moment. Happy for him, late in his career to have a chance to do that. But it was just a little too late at that point. And Florida got one more, home run in the 5th inning, I believe it was, right? And that was all that they would need because they wound up winning 5-4. So Wolfpack fought. They had chances, but, just the early damage was just too much to overcome.
Kendall, I comped you coming in, that you were I'm the Chris Stamos and you're the AJ Causey of this podcast, but I didn't anticipate you jumping into my game without even letting me finish one hitter. Like that was I even feel like an insulted Chris Stamos right there. But welcome aboard. We are happy to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, you got it.
What Joe, you go first and then we'll give Kendall catch his breath. What say you about this game?
Yeah, Kendall needs his 8 warm-up pitches first.
That's right.
I think it goes to show, and this is what I wrote about after the game yesterday, that saying just don't let Jack Caglione beat you is such an easier said than done kind of thing. Because they walked him twice, they got him out a couple times, and he had one swing of the bat that got out of the ballpark, and that was the difference. I mean, it was a 3-run home run in a 1-run game, right? And the pitch wasn't terrible, it wasn't good. I mean, Fritton missed his spot, but it's still a breaking ball that was like probably off the plate outside. And he hooked it into right center, somehow got the barrel on it at 116 miles an hour and got it out to right center on a line. And you're just dealing with an extraterrestrial, I mean, so we can sit here and say, like, don't let Cags beat you, don't let Cags beat you. But like, it just shows that NC State more or less tried to do that, tried to keep Cags from beating them. And He managed to do it. The other heartbreaking thing for NC State there is that in the postgame, Elliot Avent talked about Whitaker was hot for the next hitter. Now he ends up coming in for the next hitter, but had they maybe gone to Whitaker a little bit earlier, do we have a different result? We'll never know. But that is a little heartbreaking knowing what Whitaker did. You can't help but wonder what if he had been in the game earlier.
Kendall.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me in this game, beyond just Cag's ridiculousness, is just one of the kind of legendary performances that Brandon Neely's had in this postseason. It's like every single time Florida's needed some big innings, big pitches. Like Brandon Neely's coming off the field after every inning, and he's got his head in his hands. He's not hurt, but he's had a really long postseason. He's kind of worn out a little bit physically, and he just continues to go out there and deal. And I think, if I remember right, in his final inning yesterday, I think he threw his hardest pitch of the game on the second to last pitch of the game.
97.
And that just gives you an idea. Yeah, exactly. It just gives you an idea of the competitor. When you have that 97 up, riding up in the zone like that, man, it's tough to hit. So kudos to him. And frankly, just kind of looking ahead a little bit for Florida with the weather, because Kentucky, Florida played the night game today, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, looking ahead with the weather, I mean, Florida might catch a huge break if it rains tonight, because that allows you to give Neely 24 hours of rest and makes him available. Whereas today, I think Neely would be very questionable to be available, in my opinion.
Yep. I would say, the Cags thing, all the points you made, Joe, are spot on. I think if you're NC State, the regrettable part is, to your point, Fitzy, Whitaker versus Fritten, both of them were going to have to pitch, right? Like you couldn't send Fritten home. So they chose yesterday. We all thought it was Whitaker, but if, I think it's unfair for me to be too hard on Elliot Avent about that, because Fritton's going to have to pitch, right?
Yeah.
So they just chose yesterday. I think the problem was they struck Cags out. Fritten kind of abused Cags the first at bat, and you talk yourself into it the second at bat. But Fritten, they were trying to go up over his hands. Fritton's also a guy that walked 3 and hit 2. So what's the likelihood that he can execute that pitch? And I think if you're NC State, the thing that you're really kicking yourself about is there were 2 players on Florida that you couldn't let impact this game: Jack Caglione and Brandon Neely. Those 2 kids got to play enormous roles in this game, and because I don't think Florida doesn't have normal Florida depth to their roster. It has a lot of young players that are still very much trying to figure out their games. That said, go ahead, Fitzy.
Well, can I push back a little bit on the notion of not letting a guy beats you, right? Because it's not basketball. You can't just double team a guy every time he touches the ball. I mean, it's you can put your pitch around guys to some degree, but I mean, we're still talking about is baseball. I mean, you still get him out 70% of the time you pitch to him, right? I mean, I get that he can hurt you in a big way, and Joe's phrase, calling him an extraterrestrial, was great, because there's not a lot of humans who can hit a 2-iron like the one that Caglione hit the other day. I mean, that was absurd. But I mean, still, you got a couple of guys on base already when he comes up. I mean, are we really going to? I mean, you could walk and load the bases, pitch to Wilson. I mean, maybe that's the play. In hindsight, it sure feels like it. But I mean, gosh, again, it's baseball, man. You're still likely to get him out, more likely to get him out than the other way around. So, I don't know. I just think it's an oversimplification sometimes. Oh, we just can't let this guy beat us, Well, yeah. I mean, it's come on. The game's been played this way for, 150 years. Like you still generally, you pitch to a guy, you got a shot to get him out. A pretty good shot.
Yeah, I think I think agree with you in this part. It's easier said than done. Where if I'm an ACC person, which I am this week, where you'd be frustrated is in the 3 games. Florida beat Clemson twice, and they beat NC State once. Jack Caglione has 8 RBIs in those games.
Yeah.
And if I'm the ACC, I'm feeling like, man, that those were enormous runs in all of those games were tight, right? And so, and I also think that where I would normally agree with your point, Fitzy, Caglione is that special, where it's like I would even exaggerate it more. But again, they weren't trying to. That's the thing. They weren't trying to pitch to Cags. They were trying to throw a ball. They just didn't throw a ball. Yeah. They threw, a center cut fastball.
It just feels like the chances of him hitting a home run, a 3-run home run, are less than if you walk him and you got 2 guys in scoring position now. The chances of the next guy getting a single. You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, and then like maybe a single doesn't hurt you as much, but it's 2 runs, you know, and it's far more likely than the 3-run home run.
Yeah, I think, and the other side is like, what are the chances of Florida beating NC State if Jack Caglione has 0 RBIs?
Yeah.
You know, like I think that's the other part of the calculation. But you're right. It's like it's tricky. These games, man, the margin for error is like so razor thin. It's outrageous.
Look at NC State. They lost what two one-run games here. So it's not like they played bad. They just didn't get there's one hit each game.
Yeah, 2 games where the final pitch of the game mattered. So,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
let's put a bow on NC State's season real quick. I mean, I think after the pain of these losses goes away, what an incredible season. I mean, you look at what they did in the second half. They beat every elite ACC team. Now, I know they went 1-1 against Florida State, but NC State's ability they really were a giant slayer down the stretch of this season. And I think this Omaha trip gives Elliott Avon a little bit of closure for 2021. I know they didn't win the national title, but I'm thrilled that they got back here since that trip. This was an awesome team. You have 2 veterans like Pennington and Makarevich, and then you've got those special freshman arms. It was a really uniquely built team. So bravo NC State. I thought that was an awesome year.
Well said.
Okay, very good. Let's do game 2. So that was A&M 5, Kentucky 1. Kendall, you want to start us off there?
Well, we talked in the podcast yesterday just about Ryan Prager and how he's built for this ballpark, and the conditions were perfect for him. Winds blowing in 20, 25 miles an hour. You got a lefty who typically keeps the breaking ball low in the zone. When he has gotten hit hard this year, it's when that breaking ball has been a little up. And it was not up last night. He did a great job of keeping it low in the zone. I did think he had a little bit of a generous strike zone. Sometimes if you look at the TrackMan picture I posted on Nick Lopez's strikeout late in the game, I mean, the ball was well outside. But, I mean, to his credit, he stayed around the zone most of the night. He was mixing his pitches well. And again, Kentucky is really dangerous when they can kind of get the wheels in motion with their offense, and he did not allow them to do that last night. They had one opportunity – and then, Caden Kent turned that double play, third to first, and that was it. And that was pretty much the big run that Kentucky tried to make. So Ryan Prager was a story last night. Obviously, the other thing for A&M is they just continue to get guys step up. Hayden Schatz, I think, hitting over 600 now in the postseason on basically 1.5 legs. He's channeling his inner Tim Elko out here.
Build a statue.
Jace Lavalette. Yeah, exactly. Just go ahead and build it. He's got to have the stash on the statue, though. Jace Lavalette is the other big storyline kind of moving forward, right, guys? I mean, tweaked his hammy last night. It sounds like that he's going to be kind of a day-to-day deal. My guess is no matter what his injury is, he'll probably at least try to tough it out. But, I just give A&M a lot of credit. They're playing at a really high level defensively. One of the things that Schloss said going into that game was like the big key is Gavin over at third. And early in the game, if you remember, it looked like Kentucky was going to hit one down the line, and Gavin made a really nice play at the high corner. So I thought A&M played exceptionally well last night. I didn't think Kentucky played bad. Like Mason Moore threw pretty well. It's just Ryan Prager was just better.
Joseph.
Yeah, Kentucky had some. I felt like they had some opportunities early as well. I forget if it was first or second inning, but had a couple men on. And Kentucky's such a momentum team. When things are going well, they're really going well. The ball starts to roll downhill. So you wonder if the game turns out a little different, if they can cash in there early in the game and put Prager on the ropes a little bit. As it was, they just always felt like they were doing the opposite, where they were trying to push the rock uphill. And then once Prager really got rolling, and then once there was a 5 spot, I mean, 5 felt like 100 runs yesterday in that game. So they were just in a as good as their lineup has been, and as much as they can put up crooked numbers in that ballpark last night, 5 was clearly going to be more than it seemed like they were capable of mustering.
Fitzy.
I just think it's interesting that A&M is as well as it feels like they've played out here. Their offense hasn't really been at peak efficiency here. They've really just had a couple of innings over the first 2 games they've played where they've gotten the runs, and part of that's testament to the pitching that they faced. I think you guys are right to credit, Kentucky's pitching. I mean, it was really just 1 inning. It's 5 runs all came in 1 inning, 1 burst there. And, and against Florida, it was just kind of early in the game, right? It was the second and the third 2 runs in the second one, the third. It just feels like we haven't really seen them yet string together a full game of A&M offense where they just wear you down. And it's just, I'm curious to see what's left in the tank for them. And obviously Jace Laviolette, his health status is a key part of this going forward. I mean, how impacted is he going to be? I mean, he's gotta be a key part of this if A&M's going to win it all. It's just like he's their Jack, and now they have more pieces around him than Florida has around Caglione, but he's a central figure. So I think that's something to watch going forward.
Yeah, boy, this side of the bracket is getting very, very interesting. Hey, before we do the previews throughout the College World Series, throughout the summer and all year round, D1Baseball.com is your home for the most in-depth college baseball news, updates, scores, and rankings. Get game analysis, series previews, transfer portal updates, and so much more. Visit D1Baseball.com today. And you do not need to be walking the planet Earth without a subscription to any of the parts of the site. SEC Extra, D1Baseball.com. Type in bracket 30 when you check out. You'll get 30% off. So bracket 30 is your you could type in go ahead and build it. I think you should type that in and see what happens. That's really a wonderful banner there. Boys, let's fast forward to the first game of today. That will be North Kakalaki and Florida State. We believe it is Andrew Armstrong starting for Florida State and Aiden Howe for UNC. Fitzy, why don't you kick us off on this ACC matchup?
Yeah, 2, I think, teams that are really good, evenly matched, complete ball clubs. Looking forward to seeing them go at it. And they both feel like teams that could win it all. It would have been a lot easier for both of them. They'd stayed in that winner's bracket. Don't love their chances to come through and beat Tennessee twice in a row. But, if Carolina can steal this game, then you've got your pitching, set up okay with DeCaro and Sprague, maybe coming back against Tennessee. And likewise, Florida State. I mean, if they can win this game, it's going to be a whole staff thing. I don't think we're going to see Armstrong go deep into the game. I'd be surprised, but I mean, if they can at least get off to a decent start with him, then you can piece it together. They do have some depth and some guys that really haven't thrown out here yet. So I think Florida State's bullpen is a little underrated because they've had some ugly meltdowns. Maybe that kind of shades our perception, but I actually like the pieces that they've got back there. I mean, again, 2 guys who can spin the heck out of it, like John Abraham and Connor Holtz, and you got your low slot guys like Noah Short, and of course. Obviously, like they've got enough variety, I think, is what I'm trying to say. So I mean, maybe you're not going to have a dude who really rides it for a couple innings like Dalton Pence will do. But Carolina's pitching is set up well. I think how gives you generally more length than a lot of teams get in the number 3 spot. I mean, he hasn't pitched in a while, it feels like. But toward the end of the year, he was giving you, 5 innings, kind of a thing. And it's power stuff. It's a big physical guy. I think he throws enough strikes. And, it feels like advantage North Carolina on the mound, but advantage Florida State offensively, because I just feel like their offense has been way more locked in the postseason overall than North Carolina's. I mean, UNC's had to scramble late in games to find some magic, but they have not really strung together a game yet. It feels like in this whole postseason where they've just played a really good, strong offensive game from start to finish, where I feel like we're seeing that almost every time out from Florida State.
Kendall, let me add this question to your thoughts for this game. Tennessee has looked, I feel like Tennessee's looked like the best team out here. Probably you guys may or may not agree. Tennessee has looked very impressive. Yeah. Which of these 2 teams, UNC or Florida State, is a more viable hurdle for Tennessee? I think you're muted, KR.
Mr. McMutenstein strikes again.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is kind of a strange answer. So I like FSU in this game, but I think North Carolina has the better chance to actually advance out of the bracket, because you're going to have to win 3 straight games to get to the championship series. And I have a lot more faith in North Carolina's pitching in 3 straight games than I do Florida State. So it's kind of a strange answer, but I think North Carolina has a better shot to beat Tennessee twice.
And I'll add that I think with the wind back to kind of, who knows how it's going to stay. I haven't looked that far ahead on the forecast, but I mean, when the wind is not gusting in, I think I like Florida State's chances more, because we saw them score 11 runs against Tennessee in the first game, but it was going to be one of these tight, low scoring affairs. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe you like Florida State better anyway because their offense has just been more proficient. So I don't know. It's a toss up actually, but I would say these conditions feel like they favor North Carolina more than they favor Florida State.
No. Joe, what say you on this topic?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with the group in terms of like Florida State's interesting from the offensive standpoint, but if the park is going to play small with the wind or big with the wind blowing in, that's obviously problematic. I think I like Carolina as a better foil for Tennessee because I do think the bullpen is a little bit of a difference maker. I don't necessarily disagree with Aaron's sentiment about Florida State's bullpen maybe being overlooked because they had some high profile, implosions, if you will, but Carolina's bullpen is just such a weapon. And against Tennessee, that lineup, you're not going to shut down that lineup, even if the ballpark is playing big. So you're going to have to take some punches and be able to mix and match on the mound. And Carolina's able to do that. So that's kind of their MO, in fact, is their ability to do that. That's always been a Carolina trait. So I think Carolina would be a more fun matchup for Tennessee if we get to that point. But this game today feels like, I don't know, flip a coin because, Howe hasn't thrown in a couple of weeks, and Andrew Armstrong is kind of already expected to be a short-term option. So it does feel like it's going to be like a scratch and claw type of affair, regardless.
Fitzy, go ahead. Yeah. I have go ahead, make your point, and I have a question for you directly.
I just have a real quick chime in here. We got a comment from Moonshine on YouTube who says, "Awesome shirt, Omaha Joe." And I just want to say, many people are calling him Jomaha, hashtag
Oh,
Jomaha.
wow.
So I want to get that on the record.
Wow, that's well done.
Thank you.
Boy, that threw me for a loop.
Always nice
That's
to hear
really
from
well
my fans.
played. Yes, Moonshine. What a wonderful name. Fitzy, any concern? Or I don't want to say it. That's a negative question. Here. What are the keys? I feel like the North Carolina offense has been, like they haven't put up big numbers in the postseason. They've just won games. Like, what is the key to? I feel like there's a better version of the North Carolina offense out there that has not been seen in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Totally agree. I mean, it feels like at various times they've had different parts of the lineup be the heroes. And, against LSU in the second regional game, it was, or the final regional game that they played, it was the bottom of the order. It came through, Madera and Wilkerson with the big hits. It's been Honeycutt repeatedly. It feels like they need to it was Gallagher, the freshman Gavin Gallagher early in that Long Island game. But I feel like Gallagher's been kind of quiet last week or two.
Yeah.
Certainly Anthony D'Onofrio he hit a ball hard the other day. Had nothing to show for it, got robbed, but I mean he hasn't had a great week out here. Or well, I guess I should rephrase this because they've only played a couple games out here, but I mean coming into Omaha he was red hot and we hadn't really seen much of him yet out here. Asuna has been kind of MIA, obviously, and he got replaced by Jackson Vanderbrake in the lineup the other day. But that's a big piece. I mean, it's a big, physical right-handed presence, a power hitting bat that they kind of was a I think important part of their lineup that was maybe overlooked a little bit down there in the 5 or 6 hole. And so they've got to get a few guys going a little bit and get them going at the same time. And it just feels like right now, I mean, Honeycutt can beat you. Obviously, Casey Cook has looked good out here in Parks Harbor. I still think he's pretty locked in there in the 3 hole. But after that, it feels like it's just more hit and miss. And we'll see if they can. It's just a matter of getting guys going. That's baseball. Like you run hot, you run cold. But a few guys feel like they're a little bit on the cooler side.
Yep, that's well said. Hey, before we preview the final game today, you can hear more from D1 Baseball with the D1 Baseball podcast all year round. It's myself and Kendall, Fitzy, and Josephus over there. We break down teams, we talk with coaches, we keep you up to date on all things college baseball. There's also exclusive SEC content with the Highway to Hoover podcast, ACC content with the ACC baseball, etc., the ETC, if you will. All kinds of a variety of podcasts here. So download the D1 Baseball podcast. It's part of the SiriusXM podcast network right now on the SiriusXM app or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss a minute. Let us do the final game. Joseph, you want to kick us off on Kentucky and Florida?
Yeah, sure thing. I anticipate, Pierce Coppola for Florida. Barring something surprising, I would imagine it's Dom Nyman for Kentucky. And again, I think is similar to Florida State and UNC. I think it's going to be both of those guys are probably going to have pretty quick hooks for somewhat different reasons. I mean, Coppola is still, he's been working his way back all season, so how ready they are to really give him a heavy workload remains to be seen. And Kentucky's just been careful with Nyman. Nyman's had outings where he's been really good. He's also had outings that have been like nuclear level bad. And so, they're excuse me. So I think it's going to be a couple of quick hooks there. For me, advantage Florida there, because I think we saw last night Kentucky eventually got around to Evan Byers, who got some outs, but Cameron O'Brien came in and it wasn't necessarily an automatic fix for them, and that's been a problem for Kentucky. The carousel of, can we find a bullpen guy to get outs today? So if that game plays out like I do, I look at advantage Florida, but we've been underestimating Kentucky all season, so it wouldn't shock me if they come out there and play really well and end up moving on too.
Fitzy, go ahead.
I think the major storyline to watch here is, as Joe alluded to earlier, the weather. Just looking at my weather app, I see a lot of lightning on my screen from 5 p.m. to about 4 a.m. with percentages above 90% from 6 through 9. So I'm suspecting that this game will get pushed to tomorrow, which is huge for Florida, as I think was said earlier, with the ability to get Neely a little bit more rest, because, boy, the more you can use Neely, the better, clearly. I mean, he was, again, running on fumes, and he was just electric, I mean, with the fastball, with the life that it has and the way he's commanding it right now, plus that wipeout slider, I mean, such a weapon. But it just feels like the path here for Florida is so narrow. They need their stars to be really good, and I just feel like Kentucky does have more ways to beat you. I love the length of their lineup. I'd like to see Kentucky bounce back here and see them at their best, and so I think that'll be an interesting one.
Kendall, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I like Kentucky. I'll tell you what, after the game last night, sometimes you see teams lose that winner's bracket game where you get in the driver's seat. You can kind of just see it in their face that, like, they kind of feel like they're unsure if they can get through this thing now. Kentucky still looked really confident. That still looked like a very confident group that felt like they can get through this bracket. I like UK in this one. I think Florida's a team that they're more likely to kind of get the wheels in motion a little bit. And so I like Kentucky. But as Aaron said, the weather is going to matter in this game for Florida, especially with Brandon Neely. And frankly, it kind of matters for A&M now, because it could give them 2 days rest.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Mother Nature is undefeated. We know that. So well done, boys. Good to see you. Top of the morning to everybody. Enjoy day 5 of the College World Series, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.